Hey guys, welcome to the show. So today I've got a very special guest. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Tolu Ajayi. He's a spoken word and soul artist. He's an activist. He's an Afrofuturist and an Oreo, as in a cookie, enthusiast. And he's super passionate about unseen people being seen. There's so much stuff that we want to get into. And I really want to pick apart like Tolu's background and give you an insight into him as the man, peek behind the curtain. So we want to go straight in for this one. Tolu, welcome.
Hey, Andy, how you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I noticed that you're holding the phone there, so...
Yeah, I'm precarious. Like, my biceps are tiny right now, so this is going to help. Two, this is just quite a symbolic spot in my house. So I thought I'd pick this instead of the bland walls and all the other bits of mess. So symbolic because it is quite messy, but we can pick out some bits a little bit later. I'll tell you about why that's...
Yeah, perfect. That's great. And so me and Tolu, we met probably a few years ago, and you're a musical artist and you play a variety of instruments, and you've played with my wife Lisa in the same band at church, and so that's how we kind of got to know each other. And actually, you recently played as part of a band at my sister-in-law's wedding not too long ago, and it was great. Boogieing, yeah, you making me dance and pop out the moves.
Making you? No, like you wanted to do that.
You want to do that?
Yeah,
I need to practice my moves.
It's all good.
It's all good. So, Tolu, let's go straight in. I would love to kind of know what were the significant things that have happened earlier in your life that have begun to shape you into the person that you are?
Wow, that's a huge question, and probably one I still don't know the answer to fully until I get to the end of my life. But right now, I grew up in Southport, so it's a beach town on the coast just above Liverpool. It's a white majority town, just west of Manchester, basically. And my mum and dad are from Nigeria, so they're first generation. They came over in the 80s. They were trying to build a better life for us, but unfortunately, dad and mum experienced a lot of racism, a lot of discrimination in the industries that they were in. And through that, they thought it'd be better for us to try and be as anglicized as possible. So we didn't get taught the language, so we were speaking English, and I've got a very British accent, as you can hear. Still northern, just about, some bus and grass. But I started from a very early age, and it's no one's fault. It's just, and we did have it much easier at school, I guess, than, trying to marry two cultures ourselves. It was almost like, right, we want to be as British as possible. And so I'm trying to, and all these layers formed of me trying to fit into what it was to be white, to be British. I'm seeing on the TV, not really seeing myself as much. And then also relationships as well. Things about Christianity were seeping in. So I'm just trying to fit into all these boxes as best as I can. And that's quite significant. I guess it's not really a moment, but just like a period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then university happened. So everything sort of flipped at that point.
What was that? Was that the moment where you kind of stepped out to really explore, like from under your parents' wings, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. Just for everybody, really, it's that. But more so when I've been trying to figure out what my culture is, because I'm dual nationalities, even in my passport, right? So I'm fully Nigerian, but my culture is still fully British at this point. So I go to uni, I'm like, right, I've got a fresh start now. I don't have to necessarily adhere to mum and dad's cultural and traditional ideals of what it is to respect family and all that stuff. Actually, I can do things on my own 2 feet. However, I was a creative trapped in a scientist's degree. So I studied dentistry, and I did want to do that. I'm quite academic, and I come from a medical background. I like putting things together. I'm quite practical, but there was always something a bit more creative inside. So yeah, uni was definitely a time of exploration. I made a lot of maybe decisions and maybe mistakes, I guess you'd call them, that I might have made earlier as a teenager if I wasn't trying so hard to fit into mum and dad's ideal. So yeah, I definitely found started to begin to find myself at university, but then still in trying to be an individual, you're still trying to fit a mold because you're like, right, what kind of individual do I want to be now? Okay, that guy or this popular person or this. So yeah, a lot happened in that respect.
Sure. So I mean, I resonate with that kind of tension because my parents, moved over from Hong Kong, and they plied their trade in the catering industry, and so I grew up early on thinking like that's not an industry I want to be in. I want to establish myself and become more integrated into to this society. So I get some of that tension to kind of wrestle with, and for me, it's my Chinese heritage, and how much can I retain of that as I'm more integrated, and what is the identity of me. So but then so for you, Tolu, that university sounded like a very pivotal point. You had the opportunity to explore and therefore make a lot of decisions. What did you find out about yourself during that time?
I found out that I'm actually a really good dentist. I'm just not very good at homework. There's that. The story actually takes a bit of a turn on a number of levels, really, but I'll start academically. In the right at the end of my degree, I was accused of being under the influence of marijuana whilst treating in a pediatric clinic. And it's a really quite a long, involved story about why that came about. It's kind of steeped in racism and classism and all sorts of stuff. Essentially, I knew that I was innocent, so it was a relief after being suspended for 2 weeks to know that that was the reason why, because I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous. No one would do that, and I definitely wouldn't do that. So let's do whatever needs to be done to, exonerate myself. But it still took another 2 weeks to get a trial. There's no such thing as a student drug trial. You just have a full whack thing. And it was quite a dehumanizing process, really, having to give samples and hair being taken and all sorts of stuff in front of people just because, you could switch it out or whatever. My name did get cleared, but the dental school is very small, and dentistry is it's a very small industry. It's quite talkative. And it was around the time everybody was getting jobs. In a time when you had a dental degree and you should really just walk into a job, and I didn't. And it all felt quite interlinked, and I fell out of love with anything corporate at that stage and left. I didn't turn up to my graduation, actually, and I went quite downhill. And I spent about a year out of Manchester, not really planning to get back and not really planning to get back to life. But I did, with the help of a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of people who didn't give up. And that's when I really thought, right, I've hit rock bottom. So the only way is up now. What do I do? And that's where music came in. So, yeah, I guess one of the decisions was to not follow academia and to kind of really explore. Now that my one track has been sort of diverted, now what do I do? I've got a blank canvas.
Wow. Oh, so you're kind of a late bloomer, as it were, to the music thing?
Absolutely, yeah.
I would not have known that, because, I mean, you're like one of the most creative people I know. It didn't start until like around after university.
Yeah. So I was playing music all the way through uni. Like as people have got waitressing jobs or like bar jobs or whatever to get by. So I used to play for little bits of money in little bars, and I'd be that one guy on the piano or whatever. So that sort of kept me ticking over. I'd already played a little bit in church when I was growing up and doing that whole thing. So I had a musicology or musicality. But in terms of being professional about it, yeah, that wasn't until after this year of not really knowing what to do at all. And it got quite bad, I was missing, and officially the police were looking for me and all sorts of stuff. And so now finally getting back to life, I realized there was a lot of people waiting for me on the other side who were like, Tolu, I want you to be in this project, and I still want you to be in this project, and now you're not doing anything. Do you want to help me out?" Essentially. And I did. I just got involved in everything. Sort of whilst I was waiting to start a real job, I guess, or figure out what I was going to do. And then suddenly a little bit of music became a lot, and a lot became like a wage. And I was like, wait, if I just shift this and this and this around and make a go of it, this could be a career. It's just really interesting, man, because like you've got this blank canvas that you never really thought you could paint your own picture on. You'd set yourself onto this narrow path of like, I'm going to be, well, it was going to be a maxillofacial scientist. I was going to do surgery. I was going to have a wife and kids. I was going to have this house. I was going to live here, whatever. Suddenly you're off that track before it's even started. And you're like, well, no one ever told me that this was an option, literally changing career choices.
Mm.
And you can do that at any point if you want it enough.
Mm.
That's what I did.
And so, I mean, what's interesting about what you shared was that it wasn't that it didn't sound like, anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, like after the whole dentistry episode and that was horrible, that you knew what you wanted to do next. And so it's like there wasn't a time where you deliberately made the choice and said, well, I'm going to go into music. The way you described it was like one thing after another. And then a door that was ajar became wide open, and then more doors open for you.
Yeah. I'd say that. I'd say that the doors were already open, and I'd say that to anybody that actually, it's not as if a door suddenly opens for you. It's like you've walked past them, or you've been blinkered enough to think that the only door that you've had in your mind is the only one that you're allowed to walk through, and actually there's a bunch of doorways on the way. I don't think there's any one way to get to where you want to be. I don't think there's any one thing that anybody has to be. I know that now 100%. So that's why I joined my band. I started doing all sorts of stuff that I'm sure you're going to ask me about, actually. So I'll stop.
I will ask.
To be honest, I guess I fell through that door. And if I was talking to myself again, I would maybe say, look for those doors along the way. Maybe that stuff isn't mutually exclusive. Perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So that then, like, how do you then end up knowing that new path that you're on is actually the path that you wanted? Because it's, throughout your life up to that point, it was about this sense of conforming and this sense of fitting in. And so you move away from, okay, so I don't actually have to work to that kind of pressure. I don't have to like fit in. So that's a moving away from. Then how did you switch over to like you're moving towards then to make those intentional choices? And does that make sense?
Yeah. This is going to sound like a really wishy-washy answer, but I think it's about joy and not necessarily happiness, not even contentment, but really figuring out and connecting with what makes you feel a deep sense of joy. And you want that to be the case for other people as well. And so I fell into, I guess, and even, I'd have to say, even reached for in terms of survival. Like, it was either do this or quit. And so like I didn't really want to quit. I knew that because I was still breathing, I was still standing. I was like, right, okay, there's something keeping me going here. And maybe it's this thing that I haven't tried. So I guess the switch was flipped when I realized I was doing stuff because I truly wanted to do it, not because I had to. And as much as I convinced myself I was doing stuff because I wanted to, in terms of academia, actually those things were societal pressures, I think, were familial and cultural pressures, and not necessarily driven by joy, driven by hope, and driven by kind of passion and purpose. And it's really easy in hindsight to say, well, yeah, you could tell it to anybody, but it's such a hard thing, especially when you are actually fitting that box, when you are actually going along and everything is fine. You don't have to think about what truly makes you happy because you're successful, you know. So
Yeah,
it's easy to say in hindsight, because I got to a place where I was like, right, that's not worked out for me. But if it is working out for you, that's a hard thing to do.
sure. It's like you're never put into a position where you're forced to face those type of questions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. If everything's gone right for you, then like, why would you? And to be honest, it goes back to stuff about identity for me. I don't know if you're going to get there, but quite a lot of my work now, especially the activism,
Yeah.
is around issues of race and around issues of sexuality. And so for me, they're two things that I can't really switch off. I can't really hide now. There was a time when I really could. The race stuff, not so much. In Southport, there's not much switching off of the memories. But I know for a lot of mixed people, that is an option, especially if you're very light skinned. Maybe you can pass. Maybe you do get an easier ride if you actually don't acknowledge the quote unquote black or brown parts of you. And then for me, racially and culturally, actually, I'm very British. I can maybe switch off those African bits and those Nigerian sentimentalities and sensibilities, and idiosyncrasies. Like, actually, yeah, I can talk back to people, and maybe I don't show the respect that I might do, or maybe I get into stuff that I might not have done if I was thinking with my sort of Nigerian brain and my Nigerian upbringing. So I can pass in that respect, and definitely in terms of sexuality. So I'm gay, so I can pass if I want to as being heterosexual. I can kind of be blokey, and I was for so long. And it was a much easier ride. But did it bring me that sense of joy? Absolutely not. Like, it's hard. Acting is hard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just from what you're obligated to do and flipping that switch to what you actually want to do.
Yeah, sure. So, and this is good, Tolu, you mentioned it, and yeah, we were going to go on to the activism part, the sexuality part. Like, where was that in the journey for you then? Was that like interlinked with the music and the university stage?
To a certain extent, yeah. I guess going back, like, quite a lot of people get asked, like, "Oh, when did you first know?" Uh, I don't know if I don't know if there was a moment, but I did go to an all lads high school. It was a public school, and I do remember a time, maybe around 13 or 14, when I was like, "Uh-oh." Like, I'm looking at my friends and they're not looking at me the same way, and like, I don't get what this thing is about girls, and I'm just going to do it anyway because I can. So there was a massive time of confusion, and I didn't talk to anybody about it. Like, I just felt like I couldn't. I'm in a Nigerian home. Nigeria is one of 6 countries still where you can be put to death for expressing same-sex love, and that expression can just be holding someone's hand. It's crazy. So I know my mum and dad were not going to lynch me, but they're still from a culture where the government from the top down is saying this isn't okay. So how much more, or what's the reaction going to be on the ground? And then on top of that, I'm in church, and church, I don't need to spoon feed people, but obviously historically doesn't have a great relationship with other sexualities than the ones in black and white. So I didn't talk about it for a while. And even at uni, I was like, actually, it's still easier to not be out. But I did start to talk to people, which is good. By then, the internet kicked in properly. Smartphones were sort of a thing. So there was online forums and stuff that I could talk with people. I found escape in London, actually, and there's a lot of people down there. And it was a city outside of my own, so I could kind of be myself. And slowly, by the end of uni, definitely, I was out to my friends. And a few people at church, actually, because I was still at Ivy, or just started at Ivy, actually, where we met. I did the whole sort of I don't know, jazz hands, what would you call it? I guess just one-to-ones with people and leaders, just to say, hey, this is me. If you've got a problem with it, then let's talk about it. I wasn't like, if you've got a problem with it, let's leave. And I don't know, I guess just one by one and bit by bit, people were just very, very cool. And so there wasn't really a thunder and lightning moment for me in terms of the transition from coming out to myself to then coming out to other people.
Sure.
I was very fortunate. I guess Manchester's a very cool city for that. So yeah, and then yeah, we can go on to the other stuff in a bit, but that was like sort of my journey.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah.
Sure. No, I appreciate you sharing. And you mentioned earlier on, like Christianity. Is that because your parents were Christian? Is that how you started going to church?
Yeah, I think probably. Like most Christian families, like parents, mum and dad will raise their kids in in the ways that they should go, in order to try and keep their paths straight, quote unquote. So yeah, I loved my upbringing. I didn't have a bad relationship with my dad or any of that stuff. Like it was just, yeah, church family. And then I got to high school and I was living a double life even then. I think a lot of kids are, because you go to Sunday school, then you go to high school and you realize actually people don't really like Christians. It's much easier to not be one apart from on a Sunday. And then sort of around college time is when I made my own decisions about faith. So that's like 16, 17. Then I go to uni and everything sort of flips upside down again because I'm 18 at this point and I can go to bars and pubs and go out and all sorts of stuff. And I'm not living under mum and dad's roof. So again, there's another shake-up of faith and spirituality, and I'm much more exposed to other possibilities of spirituality and faith. But still, Jesus's words and Jesus's life. I guess if you've experienced that from a young age, or any age really, the power of truth is something that you can call lots of different things, but always rings true. I'm a bit of a logician. I don't really believe in an absolute 100% truth that we can know as humans, but I think it's a really good idea to seek it. And one verse that still rings true to me is that the truth will set you free. Not necessarily my opinion of the truth will set you free, or this person's opinion, or doing good, or living the right way, or admitting your mistakes. None of that stuff is like the truth. And freedom is a really, really, really important value for survival. And so I feel like my approach to faith and spirituality now is about seeking truth whilst knowing that I'm never going to get there, and that being okay. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. That's great, because I was going to ask a question around that and how faith and your kind of evolution of your understanding of it mixed in with your life experience and your sexuality, because you mentioned the tension between like the church and sexuality in this context is tricky. Like, so do you have anything else to add to that point?
Yeah, just in sometimes my start and my end with this, Andy, always is there's so much to chat about that you can often either live in the past or discuss and try and plan the future and miss the present. So as much as I love to speculate and talk about what it is, we can learn and glean from people who lived in the past and wrote incredible things, like I believe divinely inspired things, and how we can apply it to our present and our future. I'm just like, actually, I need to really live in the present. I need to just live.
Okay, because you mentioned that freedom, right? You mentioned freedom was one of your sorry to interject there, but I just didn't want to get this point. The freedom.
Yeah.
What is freedom to you then?
Oh, man, that's huge.
It just seemed like a very important word for you, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting more and more free. Freedom is a place without shame, without any sort of guilt, without any apology, and without any expectation. And so, to be honest, I feel like true freedom perhaps is a utopia and perhaps is not necessarily something that's attainable on our own strength. But when you live a life of love and in love, love with a capital L, as described by so many faiths, but definitely in Christianity, I feel like you start to want that for other people and you start not to look inwardly but outwardly. And that is a place of freedom. That is a place where you can be like, actually, this is all that I can be. So unapologetically so, unproudly so, and relentlessly so. And that's free. That is freedom, or at least getting there, because I'm still, if I'm honest, if everyone's honest, you're still looking at and valuing what other people think of you. And that is a sort of a form of captivity, because you're captured by other people's opinions and their views. And so it's trying to get rid of all that, trying to focus on others, trying to be at one with yourself, and wanting that genuinely for the planet, for the galaxy, for the universe. That to me feels like freedom. And it's such a deep thing that I always come back to, okay, well, what can I do on my doorstep? What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow?
Sure.
A little bit further there.
And it is that deep thing, that kind of deep-seated, I don't know if you want to call it principle or value, that's driven you to do as much of the activism work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I can talk a little bit about that, actually. So quite often on piano, a lot of stuff from Prides, and just in case people are watching who aren't up to date on what Prides is, it's just a commemoration of a protest that was 50 years actually this year. It happened in Stonewall, and at the Stonewall Inn, that was a bar in New York where it got raided by the police, and people weren't allowed to express themselves as gay people, as trans people, as drag queen there, and it was just all super illegal. Got raided, people fought back, and the year after, they started to celebrate themselves outwardly and openly. It's the first time anyone had ever done that. There was like youth and all sorts of people doing that thing, and we carry on in that spirit today. In fact, literally today, this weekend is Manchester Pride. And
Okay.
Yeah. And I would go to these prides sort of on the sidelines, knowing who I was, never really thinking I'd be in the parade, but wanting to kind of connect with it. And I never really saw myself in there anyway, because everyone was generally much whiter than I was. Until this one year, I saw a group of black people, and one of them handed me a flyer, and it had Rainbow Noir written across it, which I just thought was the coolest name. And then I didn't do anything about it for like 8 months until my now partner was like, "What did you do about that flyer?" And I said, "Nothing." At the time, I was trying to navigate telling my family about myself. And very long story short, I went to that group full of black and brown people just like myself, who were of all different sexualities. And it was the first time ever I felt like my whole self. I didn't have to be the only black person in the room and have to explain that or represent all black people. And if I was with other black and brown people, often I was the only queer person in that space. So I spent a lifetime being a token, and actually for the first time I was like, wow, actually there's nothing different about me in this space. Even though we're all individual, we all have a shared mentality and a shared struggle. So a month later, I was like, I need to get involved, and I did. So now I run it. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So that was like 4 years ago, nearly 3 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, it's a volunteer-led thing. So it's just me and one other. And we run Rainbow Noir. We just celebrating platform LGBTQI, people of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning and intersexed people of color. Just again, that whole thing of just trying to ensure and trying to create a space for people who are on the margins, who never feel like they can be everything that they want to be. And that is not freeing at all. And I feel like freedom is key to survival. So,
Wow. So, I mean, that's, yeah. So Rainbow Night is something that you now run.
yeah.
And what is it? It's a voluntary organization or group?
Yeah, it's just a group. It's just a community group at its heart.
Okay.
Yeah, we're social. We meet. When do we meet? The second Thursday of the month. And the fourth Sunday, actually, we do arts and stuff. It's just a group where people can bring their whole selves. So we have like an exclusive meet for people who, essentially, if you're not white and you feel like you're not white enough to be in a space, then you're totally welcome to come to our space. So we do run like ad hoc events throughout the year for what we call allies. And that's people who might be white or straight, who just stand by us and think, actually, yeah, I can see that that's hard. Being a minority within a minority is a hard thing. So yeah, we pop up everywhere. So yeah, little plug at Rainbow Noir MCR. You can find out all about it.
Wow. So you mentioned the long LGBTQI POC.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's, and I confess my ignorance here because I probably got lost after the letter T.
Yeah.
And we were chatting before this was like, hey, this is something that's evolving as well, the terminology behind it. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that as that kind of evolves, and that what does that mean to you? What does that represent?
Yeah. I think like anything, as culture evolves, language definitely follows, will evolve, but just not as quickly as we think. There's loads of words, some of which I'm probably not going to, in fact, all of which I'm not going to repeat. There's loads of words that we don't say anymore that people used to say as commonalities. Words to describe Black people and brown people, words to describe people with mental struggles and disabilities, that were just commonplace. And now our language has changed and some of it's been reclaimed. So that acronym I just said, lesbian, most people know; gay, most people know; bisexual, people who are romantically and physically attracted to both genders, both binary genders; transsexuals, transgender people. That's people who've been assigned a gender at birth and they don't live it out, and they don't feel and they don't identify with that gender as they grow up, and they change it. And you can be on any sort of anywhere along that spectrum, and you can be trans. And then the sort of, I guess, the newer letters to the full acronym are Q, which is stands for queer. And quite often a queer isn't an umbrella term for everybody. So I would identify as a queer person just because it's an easy thing to say. And it's something that we've reclaimed, because quite often being called queer was not great. It was used as a derogatory term, but it's one that's been claimed back now. A little bit like the N word, which I don't really like. It's not my thing, but I know a lot of Black people will colloquially call themselves and refer to each other amicably with that word. So queer or questioning as well, that can be used as people who are wondering about their own sexualities and genders. And then the last one is I, and that's for intersex people. And that's biologically if you've been born with both sets of chromosomes, or any sort of where you can be not a binary male or not a binary female. You might biologically be intersexed, and neither of those last two terms are new things. In fact, none of these things are new things. It's just that we're starting to recognize them more in the mainstream. Because even biblically, Jesus talks about eunuchs, right? Whether they're born or made or chosen. Like, since humanity has begun, each of these letters has been around, and you can tell because it's in quite a lot of historic languages. So it's just that we're finding new ways of describing people. None of these ideas or none of these types of people are new.
Yeah, yeah. And that's going to continue to evolve?
Yeah, I think so. POC at the end was just people of color. So yeah, I think so. Like, it's hard to keep up sometimes. I think for anybody, when you get above a certain age, which is probably quite young, you get set in how you talk and how you refer to people and how you box people. Like, we all do it. I'd love to be a person who just sees someone not at face value, but I do. I judge it on everything I've been raised with and everything that's around me at the time, and I make an instant snap decision about how I view this person. So for people to take that back and to be able to define themselves is big, and it's happening more and more, which is good. And I guess what's becoming more commonplace is using non-gendered language, and we do that, like, just in passing. If you don't know somebody, you would use the word they as a singular thing, like, oh, they're running for the bus, or they've just got a bag of chips, or whatever. It's not a new term, but it's when you feel like you know what someone's gender is, that's when it becomes a little bit grating, and there's a bit of tension there, because you want to refer to somebody as a she because they've got, like, feminine features, but actually that person, like, on the inside might be like, actually, no, this is not the body that my brain matches with, and I'd rather be referred to as they or he. So it's much easier now. I'm trying my hardest, and I think it will get there. The younger generations will just refer to people as they. I think gender's not going to be a thing in a couple of generations' time.
Really?
Yeah, I think there'll be more and more people who just don't fit, the blue playground or the pink playground, to the point where it's like, well, I can't just guess until you tell me, so I'll just say they. And I think that's where it's going to go. I think me and you and our generation, I think we're far gone. I think we'll always have to think about it.
It's a conscious thing you have to, like, okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, I reckon that's how it's going to go. People are still like, yeah, I think that's how it's going to go.
That's interesting. Yeah, really. And it is really eye-opening for me, Tolu, to speak to you and to talk about these kind of depths of conversation, because, as you know, I go to church, I'm a Christian, and I'm like trying to understand this. And from your experience, how would you say, what would you want me to know? That makes sense. What do you want me to know?
I think for you, especially within church, actually, I would always ask people to kind of try and put themselves in the shoes of someone who doesn't quite fit as well. Christianity, especially, is a little bit guilty of trying to prescribe everybody into a very small circle. Like, ideally, you should be heterosexual, want kids, have not been divorced, so you definitely haven't remarried, or be married in the first place, not have had sex before you get married. Like, there's all these very, very, and the circle just gets like smaller and smaller to the actual number of people who naturally fit that mold. And everybody else is trying desperately to get to that center. And yeah, actually, 90% of us are on those margins, just not in there. And so I'd advocate, imagine if you fit box less. More of you was outside the small circle than was inside it, if that makes any sense at all. So imagine actually it was much harder for you to get into that circle, and what would that look like? So for somebody who's straight in church, for instance, an easy example, maybe even straight and white, for instance, let's go with that. If they walked into a space which was literally full of black people and they were all queer, in fact, if a white person came into Rainbow Noir, but Rainbow Noir was the norm, like just think about what that would feel like on a basic level. Nobody might think any less of you, but humanity, you would just look, you would definitely get a few looks, if not all the looks. And then people might start questioning you because you realize, wait, if we're still following this train of thought, hypothetically, what if it wasn't cool culturally to want to create with the opposite gender? What if you were the outside and actually the norm was to be LGBT? What would that feel like? And just have that in mind, like whatever your mainstream bit is and whatever you feel is other, think about what it's like to be the other and how you might be able to pass in some respects, but in some respects you really, really can't. And so I guess it's just that awareness. People often use the word privilege. If you've not been denied any opportunities based on something that you can't control, that's just a basic definition of privilege. And it doesn't mean that you're any better off, because a lot of people who are in a position that's better than others will say, well, yeah, no, I still have to pay my bills and this still happens to me and I still get called this. And it's not necessarily about that. It's like what characteristically puts me in a better position than somebody else. So it's just awareness, literally just awareness, I think, and just stepping into someone else's shoes. That's the only thing I would say. That's the main thing I would say. I obviously can say a lot.
Yeah.
What you need to know is like, yeah, just that. Start from there, and that will lead to any sort of research that you want to do about what it's like to be LGBTQI in church or race stuff. Or that's a really good place to start, like being in those shoes and be like, actually, what is it like? And the only other thing I would say is exactly what we're doing, is just talk to people that are outside your box. They're the two main things. In fact, if everyone did that, even if I did that, talk to more people that were outside my box, I think I'd be a much more well-rounded person. So that's what I have for people. Yeah.
So it's a very strong and just deep answer. I think lots to unpack there, Tolu. Thank you for sharing that. So you're saying just that whole stepping into your world, like even imagining it, just have that bit of, I don't know if empathy is the right word, but just to lean in without feeling threatened.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. And to understand like why someone might then make the decisions that they do, in terms of, okay, they might not want to come to this service that I'm at, or they might not want to live the way I live, or whatever. Actually, what struggles or what challenges do they face, and what actually comes naturally to them. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you didn't.
Cool. So yeah, it's just that, and empathy is a good word. Like it's just love, really, though. Like love just thinks of the other person, love thinks of other people.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of, when we talk about the five Greek phrases for love, and the greatest of these is the agape love, right? Is that sacrificial, like, let me actually put myself in your position sacrificially. That kind of love is the love that we want to strive for.
Right, it's cool.
Really, because like you can't just get there in a day, can you? So
yeah.
To have that as a goal is decent.
Sorry, say that again.
To have that as the main goal is it's not a bad one to have.
Yeah.
Captures all, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, to connect, right? one of the things that humans are designed for, made for, is connection.
Absolutely.
And how do we break down those barriers?
Mm.
How do we do that without compromise? How do we
Mm.
do that with integrity? It's yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So the activism stuff you're heavily involved in with that. I mean, and you talked about you predicting the future there about how what did you call it? Gender naming wouldn't be a thing in a couple of
Yeah.
generations.
It's just gendering people, I guess.
Gendering. I mean,
Minor
that's massive. That's a huge.
I
Yeah, I
just
guess I'm just talking through my own filters, but it seems like such a massive thing.
um it is, and also I do talk from a very liberal outlook now. I live in Manchester. I do all this activism. Probably like centre left, but I hang out with a lot of lefties. Like if I, traveled out of Manchester for an hour and lived there, maybe that view mightn't be as solid. But just looking at the sort of the beacons of equality, I'd want to say, in our country, I feel that's the way that things are going to end up with future generations. Definitely not with these ones.
Mm.
Just look at leadership. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I feel like that's the way we're going to do.
Cool. So there's that, and your music, and your creative projects. I mean, the names I have here: Pieces of a Man, Rent Party, Good Indeed Music, Tolu Ajayi, and they're not all music, are they? They're
No, yeah,
part of the creative performance arts group.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Pieces came out of so when I'd left Manchester, when I went through my mental health struggles, Pieces was already going, and it was a 4-piece. There's 4 vocals and a keyboard and a DJ. One of the vocalists left, so I came in essentially as one of 4. I wouldn't say backing vocals; we were all sort of lead vocals, but we all did little bits. Then it was me and 3 women, Joe Fiddler actually, or Lily Joe. I don't know if you ever talked to
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good friend.
her. So it was one. They all got pregnant at the same time. So then it left me by the guys. And long story short, we're now a 6-piece over a number of years, and the band's just been signed to a label called Truth.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, which is great. So it is really cool. It's also like, oh crap, now I've got to really dedicate time to like one thing when I was having loads of fun doing loads of things. But yeah, it's a real good challenge. We've got an album out. It's called Made in Pieces. So you can get that everywhere, like Spotify and iTunes. You can get a physical copy as well. So that's all going really well. And I'm the lead singer of that band now. And it's not mutually exclusive to any of the other stuff I do, because I can only write about my own experience, and my own experience has been all the stuff we've talked about. And so a lot of that feeds into our lyricism and our outlook and our message. The album Made in Pieces is, the stream of it is very much be you and own it, even if that's not something that's going to fit into a box or something that's that you idealistically want to be. Just own the spot that you're in. That's where you're going to find true joy and true passion. So that sort of thread runs throughout the album. And through my own artistry, I do a little bit of poetry and some spoken word. That's also a theme through that. And then Rent Party is a theatre show. So I just delved into theatre last year, which is...
As you do, since you're doing everything else anyway.
Fully casually, just, yeah. It's because a friend of mine left the show, recommended me, and it was mainly a musical thing. I sing in there and I play some keyboards and stuff, but there is some acting to do. But all the stories in that show are verbatim, so I do tell the story about what happened at the end of my dental career. All the pause, it's not a one-track thing, who knows. But yeah, and there's 4 other artists in that show, and we're all people of colour, and so we all talk about struggles that we've had in that respect, being in a white majority or living on a white majority island, and being an artist in that space as well. So yeah, a lot of race in there, racial stuff, a lot of politics, or just with show tunes, essentially.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
the UK every so often from last year. So we did Manchester, London, Newcastle, some other all sorts of bits and bobs, which has been cool. And that's led to some other stuff as well, which is really cool. In fact, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that. I'm about to be in something. So if needed,
Okay.
I will let you know. I'll shoot that at the end of next month. So again, that's going to be a story about taking your spot, being who you are, and owning that. And if there's one message I'd want people from this podcast to, or from this video, sorry, to hear, it's that really, because even if things go wrong, quote unquote, and you've been yourself on, by the time you get to the end of your road, you'll not have any regret with that. Like, the worst thing is to get to the end of something having not done what you wanted to do and having not been yourself, and think, I wish I'd just been myself. I wish I could have been. And so yeah, I just feel like for me, that's been so liberating, just to try and own all the bits of me, even the bits that aren't that cool or whatever, like the geeky bits and the music that I like, and some of the more popular and some of the very unpopular music that I like, and whatever. Those bits are all me, and no one can attack you with stuff if you've already owned it. So that's just it sounds like a basic thing, but it's something that I'm sure a lot of people don't really ever get the chance or the opportunity, or give themselves the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we've talked about this conversation, and for me and you, maybe we're used to this. I know some other people watching or listening might be thinking, well, this is deep. This is deep. It's like 5 layers deep. but that's it's that kind of self-awareness and self-discovery that really helps, like make your decisions a lot more intentional, right? Because at the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about how we're under all the societal or cultural or familial type of pressures. We don't even know it.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
It's moving from that unawareness to that awareness stage, and then owning what happens after that too.
And to be honest, like, part of my process now is even owning that stuff from before, like owning the fact that, okay, yeah, I did do a lot of stuff to fit in culturally, and actually for a time it was really comfortable, and that's okay. And not to berate people who are a little bit more traditional in their outlook, people who don't have to fly flags and don't have to hand out badges and don't have to be this and that. They, number one, might be super comfortable within themselves enough to just float, and that's absolutely okay. I don't feel like everybody has to try and save the world and rescue everybody. I feel like even if we just got to a point where people were honest to themselves, that would be helpful. But also, it's really okay to fit inside a box. Just like, we need people to fill the boxes. We need people. Like, if everybody was the same and trying to do something different, or if everybody tried to do something different, even if they were like, okay, I'm quite a conventional person, but I'm going to do this other thing. No, we're all part of the puzzle. We're all part of the framework, and it's like I see it as like a canopy of trees, right? Like, apparently they discovered some kind of, it's called a mycelial network underneath big canopies of trees, and it's underground, and it means that all the nutrients and all the roots and all this kind of like fibrous energy is shared between the canopy of trees. So if one is struggling, actually it can feed off this network. I've explained that really poorly, but essentially all the trees need each other in certain subsets of things, and they're still trying to figure it out. There's also a bit of Star Trek Discovery for anybody.
I was just going to say, I was like, no way, is that true? Star Trek Discovery. That's where I've heard it from.
Yeah, for real. So yeah, they talk about it with fungi in there, and there's different types of these networks everywhere. But like for static plant life, yeah, it's a true phenomenon, and I love it. Even if it's proven not to be true, it's so symbolic. Like when one falls, in fact, nobody would fall in that situation. You start to crumble, and actually, you're still being fed by other people who might be way further down the road, and people that you might never even meet indirectly will help you out. And it's just about people being true to themselves. So whether you're in a box or outside it, I feel like just people being honest with themselves is a good thing.
Yeah, that is good. Thank you, Tolu. Thank you so much for your time. And it really has been like it's really has been eye-opening for me, and to hear your journey. And I just really thank you for sharing that. I don't know, you own it now, and clearly I've heard through it that there's been times when it's been not just a struggle, but like a really big struggle and really challenging. But it's helped me understand from my vantage point and my perspective as well, eyes into your world and what you've experienced. And yeah, thank you so much for that. And I appreciate our friendship.
Yeah, totally, man. Thank you so much. I think last thing I would say is that it sounds like it, and I'm smiling. If you're watching or if you're listening, then yeah, you can hear my smiles and stuff. But like, it's really not every day there'll be a new challenge for something or other, and it's the same. Like, we present ourselves in such a way as the people that we want to be, and part of this honesty and owning stuff is that actually sometimes things are really, really crap. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear.
That's not a swear word. That's okay.
yeah, I have to think about not. Sometimes it's just awful. Actually, there's sometimes where I'm like, I have to write myself a list, and I'm like, okay, get out of bed, like do whatever it is to do to just function, because people I love, maybe my family, maybe friends that were friends along the way, maybe opportunities, and I'm denied what I think I should be getting from that, and it can be really hard. And sometimes I'm just not in love with myself, and I think that's okay too. Own the bad bits, own the bits that are good, put monuments down when things are good, so you can look back and be like, actually, I got through that time, or that was actually a really, really cool time, and know that actually you can keep going forward. But yeah, just that it's not a walk in the park, and I don't think anyone ever promised it would be. But you look at, again, what brings you joy, what gets you closer to freedom, and what gets other people into that position as well.
Yeah. And I do actually have one final question for you, Tolu. Is how do you intend to increase your impact going forward?
I was gonna, I'm gonna say it. I think I need to keep working on myself, which sounds really narcissistic, but
that's all my world. That's all I do.
But like, and I don't mean outwardly, I don't mean in terms of aesthetic, I don't even mean in terms of like success or career or any of that, although it's all wrapped in. I just mean keep like adjusting my my focal point, and just making sure I'm on track to kind of, okay, what can I do today, or what is happening today in order to get me, one, a bit closer to freedom, two, a bit closer to a world that's full of this, what can seem to be idealistic love. And that starts with working on here. Well, podcast listeners, I'm hitting my chest. Yeah, like, what is going on with me? And once you're in a position where you can give fully and honestly, then I feel like that has immeasurable impact on the world around you. Stuff that you can't even see, stuff that you might not even see in your lifetime, but that will have a long-lasting effect just by contributing to that culture of honesty and openness and ownership.
That's great. Great answer there. And a worthy end to this conversation. Sorry, again.
Oreos, because you mentioned Oreos at the top of the thing and I forgot. But like, Oreo sandwiches are getting smaller. So while I have this platform of YouTube, I would like to campaign to Oreo, as I do on most videos. Oreo ice cream sandwiches, please restore their size. I'm not anymore. I know for a fact they're getting smaller. So
Really, are they? Is it like the whole Toblerone conspiracy?
it's not a conspiracy, man. Like, they're at 21. Like, those things are getting smaller.
Great. Awesome. Well, Oreo, if you're listening or watching, do something about it. Tolu, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, because I know you have such a busy schedule. You know, you've already just mentioned some of those projects that you're a part of. And I think they're not the only ones. There's more as well. So
it is, yeah, but it's all good. You can find it all on the tolumusic.com. You'll put a link somewhere down here, I'm sure.
Cool. Yeah, will do. Awesome stuff. Thank you, Tolu. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll speak soon. Catch up. Take care, man. Bye-bye.